So good evening. It's good to sit together again. You feel the change in the air now. A little autumn. A friend of mine just told me that she's a couple friends doing a retreat in Nankaram now, and the subject of the retreat is to be present. And it seems that's always the subject of the retreat, but which begs the question: why is it so hard to be present? And are you not present even when you aren't? What else are you? You're present not being present. If we think that. What makes it hard for us? What makes it something that we need to practice? Isn't it an odd, even just idea, that you need to train to be aware of your present? It seems strange when you think about it, but it's quite ordinary when you examine your mind. And you look at your mind and you see, well, very often my thoughts are relating to something outside of my current experience. That's not always a problem. The problem is when it makes your current experience unsatisfactory. When you start being dissatisfied with what you're experiencing, it usually is because of some comparison you're making with something not in your experience, like either the past or future. It'll be better if, or it was better when. Right? And what does that do to your experience now? Like, if only. So, dissatisfaction does tend to come from when we are no longer focusing on our present experience. And it doesn't mean that satisfaction comes from the present experience being pleasurable. Remember, I'm not talking about pleasure or pain, but being satisfied or unsatisfied. Can you be satisfied, or can you be sort of present with your experience even when it's not pleasant, when it's unpleasant, or even painful? Because much of our experience is going to, the truth of dukkha, the first noble truth, is that, this type of pain, difficulty is inescapable. It's simply inescapable. So it's really to the heart of the matter to learn how to be present, if that's what we want to call it, with pain and with difficulty. Because otherwise, we're always going to be trying to, find a better place, which makes the pain insufferable or unsatisfying. So, the facts of life of the difficulty inherent in our experience, whether it's when you have some sickness or aging or change, the dukkha of change. Things change, like what you liked or what you were enjoying passes. And it could be as simple as, your pair of favorite jeans wearing out, or somebody you love. Equally, they pass. How are we present with that in a way that can acknowledge, bear witness to the difficulty? We can be present with it, if we want to call it being present. And not immediately go in our minds to what we imagine is a better place. Because remember, that better place is imaginary, right? It's always imaginary. Because the reality is simply the present. So we want to learn how to be present when it's good and when it's hard, right? When it's pleasurable and when it's painful. I find I wanted to talk about the natural environment as a sort of very accessible place of practice for this. There's a reason why retreat centers are generally in natural environments. There's a deep reason, and it's not a mystery. You just need to put yourself in a natural environment, and you start to feel a sense of presence and attention that often being in an urban or dense urban and busy environment, a human constructed environment, tends to not encourage as much, which is ironic because we build our human environments for us to be in, but they tend to make us want to be somewhere else. So isn't that odd? There was I went to this really, really huge mall in Michigan. It's the biggest mall in Michigan. That's what it advertised itself as. Just the parking lot was about, I don't know, close to 1 kilometer across. It was gigantic. And there was a place in there called the Rainforest Cafe, right? And the wall was like a waterfall, and it was just plants, and it was dark, and there were birds singing, and everything. It was a total rainforest. But the whole thing was plastic. Like it was completely, there's not one actual growing thing there. The whole thing was designed as a thick jungle, but everything was artificial. And you could sit in there at a table and, I don't know, order a coffee. But I was sitting outside, and this is quite remarkable because it would be so wonderful. I would love to sit there, except that it wasn't real. Yeah. And I couldn't be fooled. That was my problem. I just, the sound of the water didn't do it for me. Right? It wasn't enough. It didn't cultivate the sense of presence. Right? It's more like, okay, what's next? And this is always the problem with the realm of desire. The realm of desire is always not to satisfy you, but to bring you to the next need or want. What's next? So there was also I went to an Indian reservation where there was a sacred place where there were these ancient things called petroglyphs. And petroglyphs are these carvings that the natives have done over the past couple thousand years in the rock. And they're sort of designs of like animal designs. And they're still being kind of, I don't know about worship. It's still being, visited by natives, and they give offerings and stuff to it. And there's sort of a national park made out of it. So it's protected. You enter through these gates and it says this is a sacred place, no photography, no dogs, nothing. You have to be here. It's sort of saying you need to be present here, right? You can't even take a photo. There's nothing you can take with you, right? Except your memory. So you go in and you walk around and look at these rocks. And there's a visitor center, and they have these sayings and quotes. And there's this one by this tribe called the Ojibwe tribe. And I wrote it down because it really struck me. It said, of all the teachings we receive, this one is most important. Nothing belongs to you. That was the teaching. Okay? Of all the teachings we receive, this one is most important. Nothing belongs to you. That was really quite remarkable. And it spoke of a deep truth that is quite a universal one. You can interpret it in a Buddhist way if you want to. But I believe that that teaching, that most important teaching, is not just referring to the things, in our lives, and perhaps the land, although for them it's very much about the land, but even our sense of self, the qualities that we hold so dear to us, and the person we're cultivating. If we could remember that teaching, that even myself doesn't belong to me. Right? Even my education, my language, my possessions, of course, but all the things that I think are, mine, are not mine. How would that alter my sense of walking through, a place? So later on, another quote where it said was that, of what you take, you must share. That was further on, another quote later on in this area. Of what you take, you must share. So if we think about nothing belongs to us, and what we take, we must share, then even of yourself, the qualities that you have, the thoughts you have, the intentions you have, the love that you have, of what you take, you must share that. It's really quite a profound way to be present. When we're talking about being present, this is, I'm trying to get some understanding or focus of what it means to be present. Is it just about looking and listening? Well, here I think that the natives were suggesting something else. In addition to that, it was about giving. It was about making an offering. It's not enough just to walk through a place and say, okay, yeah, I was there. Because in a sense, you're sort of taking it. You're receiving this place. Now, how do you give? And what do you give of yourself when you're in this place? So being present is not just about, receiving the place as something, great that you are now present here and enjoying this place. But what are you offering? What offering do you give when you're here? I think that's an important aspect of present mindfulness. Not just, what do I see, hear, and, touch? But what do I offer back? What do I give back from this place that I'm receiving? And it changes, it alters our relationship a little bit when we're walking through this world and we're thinking a lot about, okay, is this good for me, is this not good for me? Or even if it is good for my practice or not good for my practice. But more, what am I offering here? It's an important addition to the practice of mindfulness, which is very much about what we think is about, like, sort of observing without interfering with your thoughts. But and being very aware of everything that's going on, including the mental space. There's a metta and karuna, there's a loving kindness and compassion added here, that it's a universal quality. In this context is from the native Canadians, but it's a universal thing of saying when you're in a place, you're receiving. Your responsibility is to give back. Another idea that's often brought up in terms of mindfulness practice is the word clarity. That you have a certain clarity, and that clarity means you're not lost in your own thoughts. So often when we're sitting and we're meditating, and we suddenly realize after a little while we've been daydreaming for a while. Okay, so we've been in our thoughts, and then you're aware that you're in your thoughts, and those thoughts dissipate. They kind of pass. Because the simple act of awareness allows you to detach or not be so attached to those very thoughts you weren't aware of. Now you point your awareness or mindfulness to that, and it allows the grip to be not as strong. The thoughts may continue, but we're simply not as actively engaged. But sometimes what you're aware of when you're present is not clear. Is not clear. No? Sometimes your thoughts are not so clear. And sometimes you're not even aware that you're having these thoughts. The other day when I was driving through Ain Karam, and it was around the autumn time, there begins a phenomenon of, like, in the early morning, a lot of fog happens in that valley. And it's really quite beautiful, that fog. But when it's really thick, and you're driving actually through it around the hospital, you don't see anything but the fog, right? Like nothing, just fog. And my first thought was, I don't see anything. And then, well, that's actually not true. I see fog, right? I see fog. And as a type of metaphor for our minds, sometimes, we're looking for the view. But sometimes the view is exactly what you're seeing. But you may have an idea that you should be seeing something else. And so you miss the view. If you're seeing fog, that is your view. If you're seeing, a lack of clarity, that is your view. And the view is just as big as if it were clear and you see the whole horizon. But we carry with us certain ideas about what it means to be clear and to have a view. That it must see far in the distance of myself or others or reality. The truth. What does that mean? Your view is whatever you're seeing now. And it's just as vast. Just as every single moment you have is just as realized as any other moment. Is this any less good for your practice than, I don't know, being at work or being on a retreat somewhere? Is that single moment, if you take that second in time, is it greater or lesser? It's an opportunity that either you observe or you wish for something else. And the world of desire, samsara, is the world of always wishing for something else. And that keeps the wheel turning. And you could be on retreat and be looking forward to the next session or the next meal. And that's samsara spinning. The energy of samsara is the desire. And that desire is for what? It's for something other than my present moment. And so bring your awareness back to the view you have now. The view is the view. The view is equal at every moment. But we're always carrying with us a certain preconceived idea that the view should be magnificent. Okay. You're going to miss most of your life. Most of your life is mundane. All right, it's mundane. But how do we find the magnificent in the mundane? How do we find the unity of opposites here? How do we close that paradox so we can actually, be present and read truth in something really ordinary? So, I'm not sure. But I'm looking for examples. I saw an example the other day, 2 days ago. I was at the hospital visiting a friend of mine. And there was somebody who's cleaning floors. Now, when you think about working in the hospital, you usually don't think of cleaning the floors. But this is what she was doing. People have to do it. And to my view, it didn't look like a fun job. Because they also have to go into the rooms where people are staying and they're sick, and you feel kind of uncomfortable because they feel like they're sort of, invading your space, and, you lift up your feet and you feel like someone who is unequal to you, yet they're doing this work and whatever. It's just like sort of complicated thing, right? But then I got out of the elevator and I see this woman. She's cleaning the floor. Like, what do you call it where you have the squeegee, you know? This long squeegee that you're scraping the water with? I've never seen it anywhere else. Like, other people, in other countries, they use a mop. Here, they pour the water and then pull it with a big squeegee, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know where the water goes then. It just kind of spreads around and dries up. I don't know. Like, where's the drain? I never see the drain. I just see it being scraped. So, I thought, like, in Israel, they should make floors like this that all have a funnel down to the center. So you don't have to worry about that. You just, like, spray the hose around and it takes care of itself. But no, that's a design issue. So, there's no one else around. And she was squeegeeing, if it's a verb, right? But she was dancing while she was doing it. Okay, she was actually like sort of dancing. It wasn't by chance. And she even saw me walk by and I kind of I pushed myself against the wall because I didn't want to disturb that's another thing. I feel terrible when you walk, they're just doing it and then you're there. You got to walk over it. What do? So I stuck to the wall. And she was doing these steps of kind of dancing. And I was like, this is an example of what I'm trying to achieve. But she's just doing it. You know? Like, what Sangha does she belong to? I want to go to it. But really, this is taking the mundane and making it, magnificent in her own way. I wouldn't be able to do that because that wouldn't be my practice. I would feel like I'm imitating. So our real challenge is to find our moments of mundaneness and to unify it with that sense of eternity. That you have a temporary existence. And can you find those moments of eternity where it's no longer just something that you're doing to get to the next thing, which is samsara, but a present mind, mundane, magnificent activity is an activity that at the same time is a complete end in itself, is a fully realized, practice. And whether it's doing that floor like that or whether it's sitting in meditation, if it's to lead to something else, that is the wheel of samsara and desire. If it's complete in itself, even for a moment, it's a fully realized practice. I invite you to seek out your mentors and observe those examples of people who are realizing a full practice in their activity. Okay. We look for Buddhist masters for this, but hard to find. Look around your environment. Keep your eyes open and try to observe people who are masters of their lives. Then you'll find it. You'll find it. And it's not a Buddhist thing at all. I saw this documentary about Jane Goodall. Do you know the woman who did all the pioneering research on chimpanzees? Mm-hmm. In 1958, she went to Africa. And she was like a young British woman in her 20s. She was the secretary of the researcher. And he asked her to go because she didn't have any background in research. That's why he asked her to go. Right? He wanted someone who was not biased by theories, who could go and just observe the monkeys without any idea. Right? So she spent years there. Okay? And she came up with a full understanding of their society because she wasn't trying to fit them into hers. That's a fully realized practice. But first, you gotta let go of all the ideas you may be carrying about what you think practice is and what you think being present is. For her, it was sitting in a jungle and watching monkeys without any idea of what she was going to find. Does that make it pleasant? Well, back to the practice of nature. Anyone who's in nature knows that it can be very pleasant, but for much of it, it's very unpleasant. And I don't imagine that she had much, mosquito repellent with her, right? But it was probably pretty intense. And I'm sure she got lots of waterborne illnesses. So, my daughter went to camp, summer camp, and as part of one of the activities was they took all the campers to one of the owners of the camps or one of the board members, their house, and they have a swimming pool there. And she told me it was the most amazing place. There was like a waterfall in the swimming pool. She was blown away at this swimming pool. And on the bus, but she reported to me that on the bus back to the camp, a couple of the girls behind her, she overheard them say, "That was a pretty small pool." Dissatisfaction is the result of a conditioned mind. It's the result of a conditioned mind. And no matter how good it gets, you'll want something else. It's a bad habit. But that's all it is a bad habit. It's the habit of not really paying attention to what you have now. Whether it's painful or pleasurable. Bring your mind back. Notice when you're comparing. And notice what that does to your experience. It really flattens it. It doesn't mean we're all going to be just enjoying. But you will be appreciating it. Appreciation and enjoyment are not the same thing. You can appreciate everything you experience. Even when you don't enjoy it. And that is a real gift that our practice can offer us. That is how we can give back, even when there's no one around us. What you can offer is appreciation. And letting go of always wanting something else. If you look closely, you will find that this is enough. So I encourage you that while you are practicing during the day, and you are always practicing, you're just not always aware of it. that to notice when your mind brings up some dissatisfaction, some desire, some judgment, when you want something else. Just notice that and notice where it comes from and notice what it does. It's just an old habit. It's not giving you a deep truth. Your desires are not giving you truth. They're giving you desire. So look at it and see what it says, see where it comes from. It's the fog that you need to face. Yeah, it doesn't go very deep. That's the truth of the fog. Your desires are shallow. They don't go deep. Your appreciation goes all the way through. I want to finish with a quote from the Buddha. In the Dhammapada it says, "As the bee takes the essence of the flower and flies away without destroying its beauty and perfume, so let the sage wander in this life." Most of the metaphors given in the Dharma are natural ones, or from nature. So, we take from life like a bee taking pollen, and the flower is left intact. But also, if we examine that metaphor even more closely, we will see that the bee is also engaged in a type of symbiosis. The bee is engaged in giving back to the flower, because it's the bee that pollinates the other flowers. So while you're taking, you're also, as you move throughout this journey, you're giving at the same time. So we should take that metaphor very seriously. Yes, you take and you don't hurt, but at the same time, your responsibility is to spread what you take around and keep on giving it. So before we end, someone like to share something about your practice while we've been here this summer, this day? What's difficult and what's easy? Where? Here's the question I'm asking: where is it easy for you to practice, and where is it difficult for you to practice? That sense of presence.
For me, it's very hard to practice when my mind is very agitated, and when the thoughts are coming and going very rapidly. So it's very hard for me to focus and to be present. It's easier when and also when I'm trying new things that are complicated and I don't have the orientation and like like a strong sense of what I'm doing, I get very agitated.
So intention helps there. Knowing why you're doing what you're doing. Also, I think it's a good idea to simplify one's life. When there's a lot going on, we tend to think that that means we're productive, but it can also just mean that we're very scattered and, unfocused intention-wise. We're very focused in terms of completing activities, but in terms of having that sense of, why am I doing what I'm doing? So yeah, doing less with more intention is helpful, I found.
For me, it's a little bit difficult to be present when I have other people's energies, like people are not present or people, like I feel other people's energy is very strong, and because I feel like it affects me, I don't want to be present as much, because when other people are, I don't know, angry or sad or not focused, so I feel it's really like influence as well. And that, I think it's really hard. It's easier for me to be present when I'm alone or when I'm doing something by myself. But with other people presence, it's a little bit harder for me.
It's pretty natural. Like that makes sense. But you're gonna find yourself with other people a lot. So it's good to know your limits and then push them. But taking, solo time is important. But solo intentional time, solo retreat time. Even if it's just at home and, you're just with yourself doing your own thing. Retreat, when I say retreat, I don't mean always going away to some, I don't know what, retreat center somewhere. That can work. But most of us don't have that, and I'll say this, that luxury of just, going away. In the meantime, if you have some hours by yourself at home, then when you consider it a retreat and not just I'm by myself, then it can give you a little extra protection when you're out with others, because you sort of satisfied that inner need. like all of our activities, they can be practice or just like, moving on to the next thing. You can be walking. When you walk from here to wherever you're going to, you can continue with the attitude of walking meditation. Or you can just, get on your phones and listen to music and whatever, just like, I gotta get to my bus or car or whatever, right? It can be a means to an end, or it can be an end in itself. And the unity of opposites is that, in essence, they're both. Like, they are both. We're always doing things that lead to something else, and they can be complete in themselves. It's not either or. So if you can see that you can include both, it'll make your life easier.